Are you and your family prepared for a grid failure? Shield yourself from blackouts with a home backup system or portable off-grid solar energy system from Off-Grid Depot. Off-Grid Depot also supplies water pumps, DC appliances, and other products for off-the-grid living. Power your prep. Bug out vehicle, shelter, or remote location with a power system from Off-Grid Depot today.
Now, the economic sanctions placed on Russia over Ukraine's crisis should be reassessed if there is a possible movement for peace. That is the message coming from the French president in an interview he did with French radio.
I think the sanctions must stop now. They must be lifted if there's progress. If there isn't progress, the sanctions will remain.
He also said he believes Russian leader Vladimir Putin does not want to annex eastern Ukraine and aims only to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. And this comes ahead of a meeting of the leaders of Germany, Ukraine, Russia and France in Kazakhstan's capital, Astana, in a bid to try to restore some sort of peace.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Greene. You're tuning into AMTV Alternative Media Television. Here's what I think you need to know about the global depression in 2015. And when I say that, understand that things aren't always what they seem. Now, there's a lot of factors at play right now, namely oil. And I've talked about this extensively. Oil has diverged from the dollar. The dollar has been rallying. It is, in my opinion, the least dirty sock in a pile of dirty socks. It's a piece of shit because it's fiat currency, but again, it's the least piece of shit compared to the euro right now, so investors are dumping their money into it. But notice how oil has diverged. It's not positively correlated with the dollar at this very given moment in time. The dollar is rallying and strengthening on European Union and euro weakness, while at the same time, Saudis are bleeding oil. The West and Western interests, the United States specifically, and the Obama administration is bleeding oil to bleed Russia. But what people don't understand is that bleeding Russia actually bleeds the Eurozone. In fact, we've had politicians in both Germany, Angela Merkel's country, and also other parts of the European Union signaling this, saying that, hey, if you continue to bleed Russia, you're in effect bleeding Europe, because they, of course, trade not just natural resources like gas and petroleum-related products, but also all kinds of goods are traded between the countries. So we are experiencing and we are involved in a global depression at this very moment, with the European Union, its biggest threat, deflation. Now, we've also had deflation in the United States, but the way that the Federal Reserve has combated this is through monetization of debt, by printing currency, again, the piece of shit, the dirty laundry, by printing it into infinity. We now have over $4 trillion plus on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet as a result of printing all this useless shit. And of course, it's created exorbitant amounts of debt that will saddle our children and their children's future, and will assure not just the collapse of the U.S. dollar, but the collapse of the United States. Arguably, this has already occurred. What's very interesting is we're seeing a divergence in oil from the dollar. It is no longer positively correlated with a strengthening dollar. And I think that this trend will continue. I think this will blow out a lot of people's expectations, much as I spoke of this and about this several months ago when oil was around $70 a barrel. I said it would go a lot lower. It could hit the 40s. It could even hit 35. I think we have a lot of bottom feeders now thinking they're going to pick oil, and although it might be a good long-term investment, betting on long oil futures contracts, it can blow out a lot of longs and go grossly lower, especially if you're not taking into account that we are in a global depression here in the United States of America. Wall Street is expecting that the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates in 2015. I actually don't think that's going to happen. I don't think rates can ever really go up or be managed higher by the Federal Reserve without collapsing the entire United States and global economy. I think what they will blame it on is European weakness. What we're already seeing, what this is already playing into this hand, is the reason that the Federal Reserve can't take action on interest rates in 2015 as we build in to the 2016 election year, where I think Hillary Rodham Clinton is already the chosen figure to lead the United States of America. So what I expect personally is a continued disintegration of the Eurozone itself and the European Union, with Greece likely to exit first in the not-too-distant future. January 25th, they have an election, and if the Syriza party wins, they are an anti-austerity party, and rightfully so. I mean, that's just smart politics and business. They're anti these bailouts. If they win, and they have a strong and very high chance of winning, a high likelihood, they will likely leave the Eurozone completely and may be the first European nation to exit the European Union. And of course, if Greece leaves the European Union, there will be benefits for other first movers also to leave this union that is really just collapsed in a mere 15 years. I think it was established in 1999, didn't go into full effect, the monetary union, until roughly 2002. So remember, your politicians are all responsible for this. Your politicians in Europe and here in the United States. We have a European Union about to disintegrate just 15 years, a mere 15 years into the experiment. But again, that's the agenda, folks. You've got to break apart the European Union so that you can globally integrate all countries together into the New World Order paradigm that makes up America today, and this artificial stimulus and these bailouts that have since driven the stock market here in the States to a record high of Dow 18,000. We haven't seen this irrational exuberance, to use the verbiage of one of our past Fed talking heads. We haven't seen irrational exuberance like this since the bubble collapse in the 2000s with technology, since 2007 and the collapse of 2008 and 2009, and since the great grand old party of 1929. We've seen nothing like this. The market has really moved in a V since 2008, since the 2008 and 9 period, as a direct result of quantitative easing and monetization of our debt. It's another reason they can't raise interest rates. So again, all this pressure being put on Europe right now, being put on Russia, Vladimir Putin, is trickling to the Eurozone at this very moment. In response to that, the U.S. is driving down oil prices artificially to hurt Russia, to hurt the enemies of the United States, to bleed the Russian economy, to crash the ruble, which it's effectively done. Again, Saudi Arabia, our allies, the United States, all in cahoots on this. And as a result of this, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, will react, just like Japan reacted with their embargo that led to the bombing of Pearl Harbor in World War II. Again, we are in a global depression, not just in the United States, but also Europe. And it's why we're seeing all of this a byproduct of all the stimulus, the bailouts, the quantitative easing to infinity, a record high in the stock market, yet they're still artificially suppressing interest rates at zero. So I think that, and I would bet on, a continued divergence of the dollar and oil markets, which I think oil is a leading indicator of what's to come in the global economy. Again, Europe experiencing deflation. The United States arguably has also been experiencing deflation in recent years. And I don't think a lot of people are really addressing why the dollar is strengthening. Again, in my view, it is the least dirty of the dirty socks. Still a piece of shit, but the money's got to flow somewhere. You know, the hedge funds in America, they don't really do anything. They just borrow money at zero and then convince other investors to invest with them and charge exorbitant and very aggressive fees. Need to put their money somewhere. You see, they need to make their coin. They need to drive their Ferraris and, you know, buy their umpteenth mansions across the United States and Europe. So they've got to put the money somewhere. And where the money is now is on a giant short of the U.S. oil market. And when they're finished with that and they're pushing the dollar higher, all this money will flow somewhere else. I think we're kind of on the edge of a cliff right now, with the Dow at 18,000, global stock markets at record all-time highs, yet zero growth in Europe, experiencing deflation. Greece on the verge of an exit, disintegration of the entire Eurozone, and largely the economic system here in the United States, which has been dominated by a crony and criminal Federal Reserve for far too long. I'm Christopher Greene. Get this video out everywhere, make it viral, hard-hitting it in your face, and click the link below to support our sponsor.